What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Lock and Cash podcast, Super Bowl preview edition. We have our matchup. It's set now. We have the Chiefs versus the Eagles once again, round two, a rematch of a couple of years ago. And I'm going to go over what my initial thoughts are on this game and kind of what I'm looking at. I do have some leans to start off, kind of the way I think it's going to go, what each team needs to do. We'll review a couple of key things here that I think are going to be important. And then I'll give you guys some trends as well, some early Super Bowl trends that I think are worth keeping in your back pocket if you're going to be betting this stuff. I will have a separate prop show coming probably later this week when more of the props become available. Right now, just kind of like the preliminary props are out. But I'll probably have a basic prop show, maybe do a separate show on like the exotic props that everybody loves betting on, like the anthem and all that stuff, because we did that last year and it was a lot of fun. And then maybe we'll do a few other things along the way. Definitely talk about the referee, who was Ron Torbert. We have info on him. And then I'll probably do a more official like pick video as we get closer, a more in-depth analysis. But I just wanted to quickly go over my initial thoughts. And if this is your first time finding the channel, my name is Jeff with Lock and Cash Sports. And just because we're at the end of the football season doesn't mean I'm going anywhere. We're going to have still have the weekly podcast going over probably college basketball Saturdays. I think that's going to be my plan going forward. We'll have a lot of March Madness content because we, after football, our second largest, subscriber base and our second best performing sport historically has been college hoops. So we'll have a lot of tournament stuff. I love tournament trends, and all that. We'll talk futures and things like that. So we'll have a lot of hoops coming up. We'll do the NBA playoffs as well. We haven't really touched the regular season that much yet, but definitely we'll get into the playoffs and then some baseball stuff. So there's going to be stuff all year round. So make sure you subscribe down below to stay on top of it with us throughout the off season. Now coming into this game. Oh, and I also want to mention the Action Network app is linked down below if you want to track my free plays with me. So what I'm going to be doing is I don't have anything released yet for the Super Bowl, but I'm eyeing a few things. And I'm going to have a larger Super Bowl card because I always do. We usually have like 6 to 9-ish props, maybe a play on the side or total depending on where it ends up going. I'll sprinkle a touchdown here or there, whatever. But we usually have a nice, big card to sweat out. So, but I'm going to be releasing a bunch of those for free on the Action app. So if you download that, down in the description, you'll get all their handicapping tools, some great articles with analysis, a lot of trends, a lot of systems, and also you'll see my free plays on there. So whenever I track one, you'll get a notification that I logged the pick and you can grab it with me. So check that out down below. Obviously this game is a rematch of the matchup that we got 2 years ago. And I think that when we look back at that one, final score 38-35, we all know how it ended. But in the middle of that game, there was a lot of interesting things that happened. Eagles were up, had a 10-point lead at the half. Kansas City comes out, gets back into the game, and eventually, obviously, wins the game, a very close game by a field goal out with that holding call at the end. And one of the things that I immediately thought about when we got this matchup is I'm not really sure that these teams are much different than they were back then. You've got the same head coach, and I'll get into that. There's some trends about head coaches that rematch. Same head coach, same quarterback. Obviously, the Eagles are a little bit, much stronger now. Running back, the Chiefs' running situation is a little bit different. Defense is kind of on par with what we had, but there's, I think, a lot of similarities. So I think there's a lot of supporting data that kind of points at a game that will be higher scoring. So my first initial look, I got to tell you guys, was the total at 49, which has now been bumped up to 49.5. But that opener of 49, if it's stuck, I was looking to grab that. And I may still look to grab that, honestly, because I think this could be a game that finishes in the 50s, very similar to what we saw with the Chiefs and the Bills. Not as quite extreme as that Commanders-Eagles game, but something like what we saw with Buffalo, Kansas City, I think we could see in this game. So we have a total of 49.5, spread -1.5 for Kansas City. I think one thing is very clear with this point spread, in my opinion, because I'll tell you right now that per my ratings, I have the Eagles favored on a neutral field. Now, my ratings do not have, I don't want to say a tax. Well, I do upgrade the Chiefs for the playoffs, but I don't have like a anti-Chiefs fatigue taxed in, which is what I think is happening in the market. What I think you're seeing here with this number, which did open one or a pick in some books and got immediately bought up. I think what you're seeing is a tax on Kansas City, which has proven that they can just consistently win one-score games. 18 straight one-possession games they've won. So I think you're seeing a tax on them just because they're going for the three-peat. They've won 3 Super Bowls already with this core, and they're so good at just winning close matchups. So I think you have that. I think you also have in the market from other professionals that I've spoken to, kind of like an anti-Chiefs fatigue. And what I mean by that is like these great teams that go on runs like Kansas City, you will often find, and you all know exactly what I'm talking about, you will often find lots of weeks during the regular season where sharps are against them on the other side, right? I think back to that game against the 49ers this season where it was touted as a revenge spot for San Francisco and they were laying 2 points at home. Kansas City was +2. And the sharps were banging the Niners. It was like -1, -1.5, -2, -2.5. And the reason was because, it's a revenge spot. Kansas City can't keep winning. They're a dog for a reason. And what do? They just beat them up. It was not even close. So I think lots of games like that we've now kind of reached the point where it's like, the numbers kind of get thrown out the window. We're done betting against this team. And I think professionals, especially the ones that I've spoken to, are like, yeah, my numbers say the same thing. Philly's better, but I'm not willing to get in front of this. What's happening here? It's magical. It's historic. We're witnessing like something that doesn't really happen very often, even though it did happen with the Patriots dynasty. But even the Patriots dynasty, it got to a point. At certain points, it got to a point where it was like, it's not worth it anymore to try to step in front of this. And I think we're at that point now with the Chiefs. If we weren't already, we're definitely at that point now. So I think with this point spread, because I have Philly -1 or 1.5, I could make a strong case for both. But I think what you're seeing here is the Kansas City tax as the best team chasing this, unbelievable accomplishment to cap off their dynasty. And I think you're seeing some pros say, it's not worth it anymore. These low spreads, they're going to win. They're going to win the game, so you don't have to worry about the number. Excuse me, if this was 3.5, it would be much different scenario. But, 1.5 point spread, you can feel pretty comfortable betting on Mahomes to come through in these spots. I think one of the things that concerned me on Sunday about Kansas City was their rushing defense, and I just don't know what has really happened to it. It used to be one of their strengths. It was really good early in the season. It came out and it looked like they had improved on that unit a lot, and it's just fallen off a cliff. Even going back to the first playoff game, Houston ran for 150 plus yards on the ground against them. Buffalo just did the same thing, 150 plus. And honestly, the Bills didn't even, they gave, I thought, too many carries to the other running backs. I think if they gave more carries to Cook, he would have gashed him even more. I think they gave like 8 or 9 carries total to Ray Davis and Johnson. So imagine if they gave like half of those to Cook. I think he would have went for 100 plus against them. So there's some concerns because you're now going up against Saquon. I know that's going to be the obvious narrative is like, well, can anybody stop Saquon? But it's kind of true. It's like, can they stop Saquon? They have the personnel to do it, but it just hasn't fallen into place. Philadelphia has an elite offensive line, and I think Saquon's going to be able to get his. But one of the things that I think about with Philadelphia is, man, if I just look at the checklist of a team that I want to back in a big game, a marquee matchup, a Super Bowl, a huge playoff game, they check every box for me. I mean, they're better defensively. They're better in the secondary. They're better in the trenches on both sides. They have a elite offensive line. I know you've got Chris Jones on that side, but man, that offensive line is really good. Hurts usually has a lot of time to throw. Great running lanes for Saquon. On the other side, Jalen Carter is going to be a massive issue in this game against this Chiefs kind of makeshift O-line. They used to have Tooney in the middle. That's the thing that's been talked about a lot. Moved them over to left tackle. I think, we'll see what they do with that. But God, going up against Jalen Carter and this defensive front is going to be a problem. Now, I think one player that everyone obviously knows is going to be out is Nakobe Dean. That could hurt the Eagles a little bit over the middle. But you still got Bond there at linebacker. Still got a strong crew in the secondary. I mean, it's a tough matchup for Kansas City. Now, one of the things that they did really, really well against Buffalo, because Buffalo was able to get, if you rewatch that game, Buffalo was able to get home a few times. Like they were able to penetrate that Kansas City offensive line, but Patrick Mahomes had an unbelievable game. I mean, it doesn't look like it on paper. You see, like I think it was 18 of 26. The throws that he made, how quickly he got the ball out, neutralized everything Buffalo was trying to do defensively. So if you watch a lot of those plays back, if Mahomes hangs on to the ball half a second more, which Jalen Hurts does a lot, the Bills would have gotten home, or they would have created much more havoc in the backfield. But they were so good at getting the ball out quick. It's kind of like they anticipated. They knew this was going to be a problem. They got the ball out so fast. His throws were so accurate. He was so sharp. Unbelievable success rate in that game. I mean, man, if you get that level of play from Mahomes, they're going to win this game. Excuse me. Now, the Philly defense is much better than Buffalo's, but all I'm saying is if Mahomes is playing at that level, there's nobody that can beat this team in the biggest moments, on the biggest stage, when he's playing at that level with what we saw on Sunday. So I think that's going to be a challenge for Philly. I think they're going to target the middle of the field, knowing that Nakobe Dean is out. I think this could be a big Kelsey game because of that. Uh, this matchup also to me profiles a lot more like the Houston, like not really the Buffalo KC matchup, but the Houston Kansas City matchup. This feels a lot more like that, with a much stronger defense, a really good defensive front, a good secondary, but kind of like a little bit of a soft spot over the middle of the field or in between the hashes. And that's where Kelsey had a huge game. In that game against Houston, the Chiefs didn't even really bother targeting many of their receivers. They just played the middle of the field. And I think I think they could replicate that success against Philly in this matchup. I also think Mahomes is going to have to, and we saw it last week against the Bills, have to use his legs just like he did. He was great running the ball. He's going to have to do that again. Now, they purposely don't run him during the regular season. They kind of, probably just to keep him healthy, but they unleash him in the playoffs, and he ran the ball really well. He looked much more spry, much more fresh than he did in the game against the Texans, which obviously is a better defense, but I also think there was some rust there, the time off. So he looked a lot better in my opinion. So I like a lot of what I saw from the Chiefs offense. I'm a little worried about their defense is basically what I'm coming away with for Kansas City. For Philly, obviously had an amazing, put up 55 points against the Commanders. A lot of that was from the turnovers, but they played a really solid game. They should have won the game by double digits. It wasn't going to matter anyway. The one thing I'll say is Hurts had a really strong passing game against the Commanders, who were not able to consistently get pressure on him. One thing that Spagnuolo defenses do really well, and this is Spags' calling card, it's why he has a Hall of Fame career as an assistant coach. He's able to dial up these weird, exotic pressures. You saw it on the 4th and 5 at the end of the game against Buffalo to disrupt opposing quarterbacks. Now, Jalen Hurts we know the kind of the splits. I spoke about them last week. Very good against man coverage. Kind of like middle or below average against zone. Absolutely atrocious under pressure. Now, he hasn't had to deal with that because of how great that offensive line is. But the biggest thing that I'm going to watch in this game is that those Spagnuolo blitzes against this offensive line, because if the Chiefs can generate pressure, I think it's game over. If Hurts has time to throw, I think Philly has enough advantages everywhere else where if he can just make some plays through the air, he doesn't have to go crazy, they're going to be fine. But if they get pressure, like that 4th and 5 against Josh Allen, where they dialed up that corner pressure, if they get that or anything like that throughout the game, it's going to be a long night for the Eagles, because his drop back numbers against blitzes and against pressure are I'm not even exaggerating, bottom of the league. We're talking about 38 out of 40 eligible core, whatever it was. I was looking at them earlier this morning. 38, 37, 39. They're bad. And this makes sense because we see him a lot of the times in the pocket where he has so much time to throw. He's just standing there. And you're like, Jalen, get rid of the ball. And then eventually he'll rush out or he'll take a sack. Took that horrible safety in the end zone against the Rams. A little bit of an issue, being decisive with his reads. And the Eagles have done a great job of just not being in that position where they've had to rely on that. But if they are in that position against this game, and if there's one guy that can make you do that, it's going to be Spags. I think that's going to be the focus over these next 2 weeks, is him designing ways to get pressure against this Eagles offensive line. If they can puncture that line, they're going to have a lot of success defensively. Now, do I think that they're going to be able to do that consistently? I really don't. I think the offensive line is so good, that they may have flashes here and there, but I'm not sure they can consistently disrupt them for the entire game, especially if the Eagles are moving the ball on the ground, potentially playing from ahead. Great game script for them. We've seen it all year long. If they can play from ahead, they know exactly what they need to do. So I think these are the main pressing points for me. Can KC target the middle of the field against this defense? Can their defense get pressure against the Eagles? Can Jalen Hurts confidently make passing plays in the pocket if he needs to? There's a lot of things here to watch out for. With all that being said, my initial lean, like I said, was over. I make the Eagles a favorite. I just don't, if you ever gave me a +2.5, I would take it. I don't think we're ever going to get there. This touched 2 and then came right back. I would take Eagles +2.5. I think at this number, I would lean Kansas City to just win the game, money line. But would I be surprised if the Eagles won this? No, I think they're better basically everywhere except for coaching and quarterback. And obviously, those are the 2 biggest things. So advantage to Kansas City there, but advantage to Philadelphia everywhere else, man. It's tough when you compare the two rosters. It's really kind of a drastic gap. The Phillies much better on defense. They're much better in the trenches, which is something you want when two elite teams are playing each other. They can run the ball better. So there's a lot of man. It's going to be. I think it's going to be a really good game, and I think we're going to get one like we got a few years ago, where it comes down to a 3-point win at the end, and kind of like whoever has the ball last might win the game. But those are my initial concerns, I guess I would say, in terms of each team, what they need to do and what they need to watch out for. The Chiefs running game, by the way, I think it's just worth mentioning. It's just non-existent. I mean, it's when I say the Eagles can run the ball better, I mean, it's like an amazing running game to like nothing. They can't move it at all with Pacheco. Now this is going to be an indoors game, obviously in New Orleans. So one of the things that I think about is like Kareem Hunt is kind of like that bruiser back. We saw it against the Bills when they needed a couple of clutch runs. He was able to like take the contact, get 4 or 5 more. He's really good at that, and that hurts more when it's an outdoors game on grass or whatever the case may be in the elements. And I wonder if Pacheco could maybe have a little more success in an indoors game. Speed is going to be a real problem. Whenever you play indoors on that kind of field, speed gets amplified. So somebody like Xavier Worthy, in the video with the props last week, I mentioned his rushing prop 2.5. He blew that away. If he gets 2 carries in this game, someone like him on that fast track could really be a problem. A guy like on the other side, obviously Devonta Smith, AJ Brown had a huge game against the Commanders. So Smith gets overlooked a little bit, but indoors fast track, he's got a lot of speed. Obviously Saquon, right? It gets amplified as well. But one of the people that I'm thinking about in terms of who's going to be severely depressed in the prop market is Pacheco. Maybe Pacheco gets a few more carries. Maybe he busts off an explosive run. He can run a little bit better indoors. So that's one of some of the stuff that I'm looking at. But in terms of the side right now, I think at the current price, I'd have to lean Kansas City. But I guess what I'm saying is that I feel like this is a true coin flip. And it kind of sucks because when I come on here, I talk about these, I usually have like decisive takes. I think it's important actually when you're handicapping and betting on sports to be decisive and confident. Even if your side ends up being wrong, you kind of need to have that. You need to be able to defend your position. On this game, I don't have anything firm yet in terms of the side or total. I'm leaning over and I'm leaning Kansas City. I am going to be looking at the prop market as well, and we'll probably have a separate prop video. We will have a separate prop video going forward. But for now, I'll go ahead and make a prediction that we're going to get a game that goes over the total. And by the way, when you're looking at totals, Super Bowl historically, first half under, second half over. That's been the way it goes. Teams come out a little bit nervous, way jacked up on adrenaline and anxiety and all that stuff. And then it kind of settles in and then we get going. So maybe look to play that angle, the second half over and the first half under. And I think, my prediction as of right now, I'll say Kansas City wins the game. Let's go, like a 34-30, 34-31, maybe something like that. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. So that would be my my initial prediction. Now, I did want to talk about trends because obviously I love data, betting systems, trends, all that stuff. So let's go over a few of these. A lot of these, spoiler alert, are going to favor Kansas City, obviously. But Mahomes on a neutral field or at home. Okay, so basically anywhere other than being on the true road in a true road game. In the months of January and February in his career, 16-2 straight up. When it's November or later, 44-6 straight up. He's 8-0 in the playoffs at home or on a neutral when he's a favorite below 3 or an underdog. Hasn't lost. So the last instance of that was the game on Sunday against the Bills. So he's 8-0 straight up and against the spread when you got a line less than 3. So pretty unbelievable stuff. Philadelphia had put up that 55-point game against the Commanders. They're the third team ever to score 45 or more points in a conference championship game. And obviously the 2 previous teams won the game. But the 2 previous teams then lost in the Super Bowl. So Philly's looking to break that trend at a third team. And when a team puts up 40 points or more in a conference championship game, they're then 3-7 straight up in the Super Bowl. So kind of like that buy low, sell high that we looked for in the regular season, where if a team goes nuts and puts up a huge offensive game, we expect them to kind of regress in the next game. That's kind of what this data is hinting at here. Another thing, when we get to coaching, this is the 5th time ever, guys, that 2 head coaches have rematched in the Super Bowl. And the previous 4 times that this has happened, the winner of the first Super Bowl, has also won the second one. So basically what this trend is saying here is like, all right, this is the 5th time that Two coaches have rematched. Well, in the previous four, the Andy Reid would have won the second one. So this is saying, so basically if Sirianni were to take this one, this would be the first time ever where you've had a rematch of head coaches and the loser of the first one won the second one. Kind of interesting. Also, Vic Fangio has history against Patrick Mahomes with the Broncos and obviously with the Eagles. But Vic Fangio defenses versus Mahomes, 0-8 straight up, 2-6 against the spread. In those games, he got 10 touchdowns to 2 interceptions and a 64% completion rate. And he's coming off of what I thought was his best game of the season. Thought he played a masterful game against the Bills. So we'll see what happens about that. Another thing about the point spread, I've talked about this during the regular season a few times, about how the spread doesn't really come into play a lot. Well, it's even amplified in the Super Bowl. We've got a tiny spread now. Super Bowl winners, when the spread is 6 or less, they're 30-1 against the spread. So don't stress too much about the number, is basically what I'm saying. And when the spread is 4 or less, which is what we have here in this game, 23-0 against the spread, the winner of the game. This is basically saying this game ain't landing on 1. So if you like the Eagles, take the money line. And if you like Kansas City, just lay 1.5. It's not going to land on 1 or 2, according to obviously there's a chance that it still could, but according to this. Last thing that I saw, which was pretty interesting, and I got this from the Action Network app, which is why I always mention it to you guys down in the description. Great data on there. I got this from one of their articles. Saquon Barkley's rushing prop. I made a Twitter thread over the weekend about this, about don't bet on Barkley's props because they're so wildly inflated. And then, of course, the game starts. He breaks off that 60-yard run. All the trolls start chirping in the comments. But he went under. He ended up finishing the game under his rushing yards, under his receiving yards, under his rushing attempts because they all were wildly inflated. His rushing prop opened for the Super Bowl around 110. It's now sitting at 116, 115.5, depending on where you look. The last time a running back has gone for 120 yards in the Super Bowl, 2003. So it's been over 20 years since someone has cleared a prop like this, 115 rushing yards in the Super Bowl. So just watch out for that. Me personally, it's already gone up 5 yards. I think it's going to go up even more. And I think if you wait till that second week, right, we're in the first week, the lull, I think if it's the second week, the week right before the Super Bowl, the public is going to come in and hammer the hell out of these props for all the star players. So if you want to bet unders, like I'm looking at a lot of unders, wait, be patient and wait. You will get 3 to 5, maybe 7, 8 additional yards on your prop. All right, guys. So that's pretty much it for this one. I will have, like I said, another video coming up. Once I have all my props set in place, I will make a video. We will go through all of them. I'll probably include touchdown scores as well in there. I'll probably make an underdog video with several underdog entries just to have a lot of fun with that. And I'll definitely have a referee video coming as well. And probably at the end of the day, probably a couple days before the actual Super Bowl, I'll probably post a video with my official pick. So subscribers get it early. So if you want to subscribe and get on to finish out with us, there's a link down below. We're also around 60% against the spread in college basketball this year. So it's not just NFL, it's everything included. So there's a deal down below and the Action Network is down below. Thank you guys for watching with us all season long. And there'll be more to come. Just because football's over, it doesn't mean anything. Hit the subscribe. We're going to be talking hoops. We're going to be talking baseball. It's going to be a lot of fun all year long. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Let's get it.